Hey everybody, it's Friday night and I thought we'd take a little trip around the world. I've been working on a few tanks this week. This is my 29 miscellaneous. We always start here. This is not one of the tanks I've been working on, but I did recently add a Bolivian Ram. It's the first new fish I've put in this tank for quite a while, and so far so good. I'm not having any issues with it. It's eating, it's looking normal, its color's good, its behavior and activity is normal. So I'm not worried about that at all. I think it's going to transition nicely. And as far as any kind of ick or anything like that I would have brought home with it, since I did not quarantine it, I've not seen any signs of that or any other kind of problem. So it's been long enough now that I'm not too concerned about keeping a very close eye on this tank. Again, I think this little Bolivian Ram down here is going to settle in very nicely, and it's going to grow out and get to spend the rest of its life in this tank. So other than that, not a lot going on. I do need to do a water change in here. You can see I got a bunch of crud collected on the filter intake back there. I did change the filters on this tank a few days ago. This is one that's got the hang on the back filter, and you can see it's already doing it again. When the filters start getting clogged up, the backflow is forced to go down through the center there, and that's a sure sign that I need to get in there and change those filter pads again. So it's probably been a little longer than I'm thinking it has been since I was in there. It feels like it's just been a couple days, but knowing me, it's probably been a week or more. And yes, the filters in this tank do get clogged up that quickly. It's a lot of fish in a 29-gallon tank. I got a lot of loaches and stuff on the bottom. I've got some plecos in there, and then of course you can see all the other schooling fish swimming around. And so this tank does produce a lot of waste. So no biggie, we'll get to that. Not in any hurry to worry about that one. This is my 55-gallon gourami tank, and I am currently treating it with ChemiClean. I have had the, I guess, Blackbeard algae in combination with other stuff going on in this tank, and I've been kind of fighting it for a little while now, and I think I'm finally getting on top of it. I blacked the tank out for a little while, and then I have treated it with ChemiClean aquarium treatment. And you can see most of the stuff in there looks like it's dying off, but I'm not 100% sure yet. We're going to give it some time, and we're going to continue the ChemiClean treatment. So one of the other things I did in this tank was I removed a lot of plants, and I rearranged the rocks, and I really opened the tank up. And what that did was it caused a great deal of water circulation. I have not only the 525 gallon per hour filter on here, and that of course is nominal. As soon as you start putting filters in there and as soon as they start getting dirty, you're not going to have that kind of water flow, but it's rated at a 525, so that's what we go by. So I got the 525 gallons per hour circulating through the filter, and then I have a 1500 gallon per hour power head down here, which again is somewhat clogged up, but I did get in there and scrub that out, and that really opened it up and allowed for a lot more water to flow through it. And suddenly my tank was a very vigorous flowing tank, and I've got these gouramis in here, I've got the angelfish in here. None of these fish like a lot of current, and my poor gouramis were struggling. They were hiding up in the corner. My little honey gourami, oh, she's still sitting up there, is just hiding in that corner because that's like the calmest place in the whole tank. I'm really surprised that my chocolate gourami is so out and about because they are also a very calm water fish. They don't like to be in vigorous moving water at all. So right now I have turned my power head off. I unplugged it altogether because the flow in this tank was so vigorous, but you can still see how vigorous it is. I mean, I've got, this Anubias is moving around in the current, and Anubias is not a flexible, flowing kind of plant. Oh, check it out. My little Angelicus loach is in there grooming my Raphael catfish. I like watching the loaches do that. They'll get out and they'll groom other fish. I don't know whether they're finding anything on them or not, but they sure try. So that's what we've got going on in this tank. I've been treating it. We're still working on it. I'm going to work on doing something about getting that circulation to be a little less. And then, of course, once the air stone comes out of this tank, that air stone's actually causing a lot of water flow and circulation too. So when that comes out, we can maybe either put the power head in a different tank, maybe swap it out. I do have a power head in my 40 breeder, my former Black Ghost knifefish tank, and that one only moves like 420 gallons per hour or 425 gallons per hour or something like that. And that kind of behavior there is what I want to see out of my live bears. That's up there just nipping algae off the glass. So live bears are great algae eaters, and I'm hoping if I can get on top of this, they'll help me stay on top of it. Plus I've got the can't think of what I'm looking for now. The Hillstream Loach is in this tank, and the Rubber Lip Pleco are both still in this tank. So we've got the all-flux grazers as well as the algae eaters. There's the little Hillstream Loach down there. So they all do a good job at helping to keep this tank clean, but I basically just had an explosion where everything went crazy. It's interesting to see now my little honey gourami is out and over here. She's got no color left on her at all. She must be terribly stressed out, so I'm hoping I can get this tank sorted out and situated here in the very near future. My 55-gallon T-bar tank, there's not a lot to talk about. The last 2 or 3 times I've shot video about this tank, I have said that I needed to do a water change on it. I've got some dead leaves down there at the bottom that need to come out, and there they still sit. I've not done anything with this tank. You can see all that pleco poop lying on the bottom. You can see the nose of my pleco sticking out right there. So again, that's not a small fish. That's just its nose. And then there, of course, is my T-bar with the namesake of the tank. And nothing really going on in this tank. Not a lot to talk about. So we're going to move on because I do have plenty to talk about in my other tanks. And this is one of them. This is my, I'm now calling it my 40 breeder, but this is formerly my Black Ghost knifefish tank. If you follow along, you'll know that I lost my Black Ghost knifefish in this tank. I was doing some work on it. I blacked it out. And through a series of events that I'm not going to go through again, I wound up getting into an oxygen poor situation. My filter got clogged and there wasn't much circulation and water flow, and with the lights being turned out, it wound up reducing the oxygen levels to the point where all the fish in the tank were hovering right at the surface, except for my Black Ghost knifefish, which was dead, and I lost one Serpe tetra, and everybody else survived, but I lost my Black Ghost knifefish. So we now have my, I'm just going to call this tank my 40 breeder, because who knows, you know, what other fish are going to come and go. So now I'm working on trying to get all of this hair algae under control. I did a treatment with the ChemiClean, and that got all of the gunk out of the tank, but the blackout that wound up killing my Black Ghost knifefish tank did absolutely nothing to this hair algae. I mean, it's still in there enough to be noticeable, but it's really, really reduced since I put a handful of guppies in there. Once again, those little live bears are worth their weight in gold when it comes to eating algae. They really do. A lot of people think of an algae eater as like the Rubber Lip Pleco or that Hillstream Loach or like a suckerfish, and those are not algae eaters per se. They are all-flux grazers, and they actually scrape the surfaces and scour it, and they're cleaning that surface growth and that biofilm off of the materials. An algae eater is something like a guppy or a molly or something that just nips algae growing off the surface. They don't scrape the surface clean. You can think about it as like mowing the lawn. They'll keep the algae trimmed to a very, very tight crop, but the algae is still going to be there. They're not going to scrape the surface clean. Like if you can see that rock, how clean that is, that's from an all-flux grazer. But if you see how clean the Anubias is, that's from an algae eater. It trims it down and keeps it closely cropped, but there's still algae all over that Anubias. It's just a continual source of food for the guppies in there. So I'm going to try reducing the light for a little while. One of my viewers did tell me that they had a similar problem and they cut the light back in the tank, and it took a while, but eventually the algae died off. It was only really thriving because the tank was so brightly lit and for so many hours each day. So right now we're down to just one of those lights, but that is still a pretty intense light for this little 40-gallon tank. The reason I have two on this tank, and all my 40 breeders really, is because they're so deep. It's 18 inches deep, so one fixture down the middle, like we have now, really leaves a lot to be desired. And if I moved that fixture all the way to the front so we could see these fish rather than seeing their silhouettes, then the whole back of the tank would be completely dark. So it really does need two fixtures on here. But unless you have two really low light fixtures, you're putting a lot of light on there. That one fixture that I've got on there alone right now is a fair amount of light. And when I put two of them on there, it really, really lights this tank up. So we're going to see what happens. I'm not really in any huge hurry to do a lot to this tank because of, I just did a bunch of water changes and everything. It's the water's clean. Honestly, it doesn't even need that air stone in there anymore. I haven't gotten around to doing anything after I cleaned up the tank. When the black ghost knifefish died, I've just kind of left it alone ever since then, and here it sits. So the guppies are starting to have an impact. We are starting to see a reduction in algae, but we've still got a long way to go. So we'll see how that one plays out in the future. My 125-gallon native tank is still just ticking over like a clock. Nothing really going on in here. This is what the tank looks like all the day. You come in and you see that, but of course once I start walking over here, I get in front of them, they'll really start moving around and getting a little more active. They'll think it's feeding time, especially if I come over right here to the front, lift up the lid a little bit. Now they might start swimming around. Of course they're not going to now. They're going to be completely contrary. Normally I come in here and they're splashing at the surface and banging into the glass because they think it's feeding time. See, there they go. Look at them. Oh, they're biting my fingers. Look at them. Oh, that feels so weird. They don't have teeth, but when you get that weird little mouth wrapping around the tip of your finger, it feels really strange. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's weird. Alright, that's enough of that. That's really, really strange having them bite your fingers like that. So that's what's going on in my native tank. Not a lot of anything. I did have a couple people say over the last few days, and I've been thinking about this, now that it's springtime, everyone's looking forward to me going down the stream and catching crayfish and putting the minnow trap out. And I don't really know what I'm going to do. I don't know why I'm going to do that. I'm not putting any crayfish in this tank because that's basically just putting food for the chubs in here. Those creek chubs will destroy any crayfish I put in here, so there's no point in doing that. And I'm not, if anything, I'll be taking fish out of this tank as they get bigger. I'm not going to be adding any new minnows to it. The one thing I have considered is possibly getting a small sunfish, large enough to avoid becoming prey to chubs here, but big enough, large enough not to get eaten, but small enough not to be a real problem and not to add too much more bioload to the tank. My main concern is my spotted tilapia down here and whether or not putting a sunfish in there is going to cause problems with them fighting. So we'll have to wait and see how that one plays out too. But in the meantime, nothing's really going to change with this tank. Again, I guess at some point when I get around to it and I get bored with it, I'll break it down and we'll make it into something completely different. And we'll go from there. But as of right now, I don't have any plans of doing that. So let's just assume that maybe if we see any changes at all, it might be the addition of a small sunfish or something, similar. So we'll see. Not going to worry about talking about my snail tank. Got in here. This is my 40-gallon, another 40 breeder. But this is my purple spotted gudgeon tank. And this is what the tank looks like when it's clean and when it's lit by its own light. I've got my big waterfall tank LED panel turned off, and that floods this tank with light. Normally you'd be seeing that gudgeon lit up more by my waterfall tank than by the light in the tank that it's got on now. So I did a chemi-clean treatment in this tank, and if you saw what it looked like before, it had that black grungy stuff growing all over everything. I've cleaned most of it out, but some of it escaped me. You can see a little bit of black crud. Actually, I think that black crud might just be sand that's weighting that leaf down. But there's some of it right there that I did not get out of the tank, and that is broken loose off of whatever it was, and I'm talking about that little cruddy looking green stuff right there. That must have broken off the surface of whatever it was lying on, because that's clearly just lying, the current has moved it to where it is and it's sitting there. I will reach in and just pull that out when I'm done this video. But there's a good example. You see the lower leaves right here. You see how that's got that sort of black cruddy growth on it. That's dead. I just was unable to actually get all of it off. Here's another good example right there. You can see the dead, that black stuff on the tip of that Java fern in there. Again, it's been killed off by the treatment. when I got in there to vac everything out and clean it out, I just missed a few spots here and there. You can see down here there's a little bit of crud left on the Java fern there. But the ChemiClean is good stuff. It really does a good job at knocking back all of that gross growth that develops in a tank after a while. So just as a precautionary treatment, or just as a, getting the tank looking clean again, I like to use that. And I got 3 or 4 tanks that just tend to get cruddy after a while. I got some tanks that never have a problem, and then I have some tanks that 2 or 3 times a year I have to do this treatment on them. I'm not really sure why, but each and every tank is unique and individual, and so I treat them as such, and I treat the tanks that needed to be treated, and I don't worry about the ones that don't. So this is actually a lot of activity for my purple spotted gudgeon. You can actually see it sort of moving around the tank a little bit. Normally it just floats there like it's a plastic bath toy, and you wouldn't even know it was a real living fish until feeding time, and then it becomes very active. So moving on to my dirty 125 gallon tank. So let me step over here where we can get the whole tank in one look. This is another one I need to get in and do some work on. As you can probably see, the glass is all grungy and needs to be wiped down. And as always, my water sprite down here is just growing like crazy and dimming out the tank and making it really dark. You can barely even tell that I've got fish over here hiding in the shadows. So I'm going to be getting in there and doing that. Don't forget, I do sell my aquatic plants. I don't have a lot of variety. It's usually just the water sprite and Java fern, and I've got a lot of Java Windelove, which is this Java fern with those little fingery tips on it. I got a bunch of that. And maybe some Java moss now and again, maybe a bit of Anubias now and again. All real basic, beginner, simple plants. I don't mess around with anything that's complicated or challenging. I like just nice, easy to take care of kind of stuff, and it makes my tanks a lot more enjoyable for me. I don't get into the real difficult fiddly plants that need all kind of foods and ferts and special lighting and all that kind of stuff. So this tank is going to basically just get a good glass wipe down, water change, and then I think this one will be the next one that I either black out or treat with ChemiClean. I'll probably start by treating it with ChemiClean, and then I'll black it out if that doesn't kill everything off, because this is my main concern. Is, I know it's kind of hard to see, but I've got that weird cruddy growth that always grows on top of my plants here, and I don't know whether that is algae or cyanobacteria. I'm always confused by what that actually is. And sometimes I use the ChemiClean treatment and it wipes it out, and then sometimes it doesn't. So I'm assuming it's probably a cocktail of both algae and cyanobacteria getting in there together, and one type of treatment kills off one but not the other. And so, again, not a big deal, just part of, tank maintenance. I'm just kind of thinking about what it is and how I have to deal with it. So the way I've always dealt with this tank in the past was just by wiping everything down and scrubbing it out. I've never done a ChemiClean treatment on this tank that I can remember. I guess I may have over the years, but I don't remember ever doing a ChemiClean treatment on this tank. And I've never blacked it out. I've only started blacking tanks out very recently. In all the years I've been keeping fish, I'd never tried that until recently. And it seems to be a fairly effective method of doing it. There's my rainbow shark that I recently moved into this tank. He has settled in nicely and does very, very well in here. I'm very happy with that. And over here, I've just noticed, you can see all those little scraped teeth marks. That's from my chocolate zebra plecos that are in this tank. They've been working on the glass and helping to keep the glass clean, but alas, they cannot do it all on their own. I'm going to need to get in there and scrub that glass down and wipe that all off in my next water change. So that'll probably be within the next day or two. Again, I'm trying to get caught up on everything. I'm still trying to get my truck sorted out and having all kind of other personal issues going on. So until that's all sorted out, I'm going to be kind of running behind here in the fish room. A 20-gallon angelfish tank, nothing really to speak of in here. I did notice the last time we did a video that I had a little baby cherry barb. You can see that's still in there, still alive and doing well. And I've not seen any additional little baby cherry barbs popping up in here, but you never know, we might. We got some, we got the one, so there's chances that they'll all breed again, and out of the next batch, maybe more than one will survive. I'm assuming that the angelfish, and probably even the parents, either ate the eggs. I'm not really sure about the breeding with the barbs. I've never seen them do that before, those little cherry barbs before. So other than that, like I said, nothing really going on. Just trying to give everybody a little look at the tank here. I've considered moving my little panda molly there into my former black ghost knifefish tank and seeing if she would help with the algae control in there. But I kind of like her in this tank, and she's grown up in here, and I think I'm probably going to wind up just leaving her in here. You know, little live bears are common enough that if I want another one, I can always just go over to the PetSmart or something and pick up, you know, a couple of mollies, or just get something different and put it in my other tank. But you can see this tank stays fairly well cleaned. It's got snails in here. I've got the clown pleco, and then of course I've got the live bears in here that just spend most of their time eating algae. They're fantastic algae eaters. My embarrassment of a quarantine tank, even though I haven't used it as a quarantine tank in quite a while. The last fish I put in there was that Bolivian Ram. I put 2 of them in here several weeks ago, and one of them bullied the other one. And so I moved it into my 29, which is the fish we started out this video by looking at. And then the other one that was left in here was bullied to the point where it never made it. After a couple of days, I just stopped seeing it, and I never even found its body. So it either got devoured by the loaches that are in this tank, or it just rotted away, and I never even noticed it. It may have died inside that castle, or it may have died inside the little SpongeBob house, and I never saw it. So one of these days I'm going to get in here and do a really good cleaning on this tank. I might even break it down altogether and just set it back up, because it's really gross in here. Although this might be a good example tank to do a chemi-clean treatment on, and we can do a before and after video and see what the chemi-clean actually does to a tank like this. It'd be a good demonstration video. So moving over to my 40 breeder brackish tank. This is Butterbean's tank, my figure 8 puffer, and I only keep the one fixture lit most of the time, but since we're going to shoot video here, let me get this front one turned on. So that forward fixture is an LED. It's an LED that was designed for planted tanks, and as such it's got a lot of light, and it's got additional blue and additional red spectrum in there, and so I don't need that much light when I'm not in here during the day. If I really want to shoot video, or I want to come in and really enjoy the tank and look at Butterbean or something, I can always turn that on. But I don't leave it on because of you think it's bad looking now with all of the diatom algae and all that brownish growth in there. Imagine what it would look like if I kept this light on all the time. But when I do put it on, it sure makes those fish look good. So, I also want to point out, if you can see that big chunk of Java fern right there, that is the same Java fern. As you can see, all of those little, that's the same plant. I don't know if it's being stunted by being in the brackish water. I've been told that Anubias can grow in brackish water, but I've never had any luck getting it to take. The best I've ever done is getting my Java fern to grow in brackish water, but as you can see, it really does a number on it. It stunts it and makes it grow very unusually looking. You wouldn't really think that was Java fern at first glance, but it is. That frond right there, which is what you'd recognize as Java fern, is growing right off of the same rhizome as all of that stuff, and you can see it right there. And that stuff's been in here for a couple years now, and it still looks like that. Whereas my other Java fern, I've got to basically take a lawnmower to the inside of the tank to keep it clean, or to keep the Java fern trimmed back. In here, I've basically just got this going on. All these bigger pieces you see, all of them are the original pieces that got put in there on the main rhizome, and then any new growth that's happened while it's been in there has come out very short and stunted. So I can only assume that that's because it's in the brackish water, and the roots, you know, are functioning differently, and is dealing with the high salinity in a different way. I'm not really sure how plants deal with the high salinity. I know why most plants can't live in high salinity, but I don't know how the ones that can do, if that makes any sense. So anyway, that's about it. I'm not going to do any video of the waterfall tank. I just did a update on the waterfall tank a little while ago, so that's going to be a separate standalone video, and then we'll call this just a basic round the world video, and we'll wrap it up at 25 minutes there, which is about par for the course for me. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss anything coming up. You never know what it's going to be with me, and I like to think all of it's good stuff. So don't forget, this one is my 29 miscellaneous, and I'll see you real soon on the next one. Thanks again for watching.